Hello and welcome to Alan History Nerd. In this video I'm looking at the Rise of Macedon. This is the first of my videos in this series, and today I'm going to concentrate on Philip's diplomacy and military developments. In particular, his building of this Macedonian army is only going to be important for him, but later on is going to be important for his son Alexander. So this video is designed for A-level ancient history. And this is the OCR spec, and we're looking at these particular bits of the specification. So the growth of Macedon's power and all of Philip in that process. So we're looking at Philip's opportunism and diplomacy, his military reorganisation, practices, technology, and advantages. So I'm going to crack on and have a look at the different bits. So we'll start off with Philip's opportunism and diplomacy. So Philip spent his childhood as a captive in Thebes, and it's here that we believe that he learnt a great deal about diplomacy and military tactics. He was educated in the house of Parmenides, a Theban general, and was instructed alongside Epaminondas, who was a very famous and highly thought of general. So he was raised alongside him, and we think that Philip picked up a lot of ideas in the shared education that they had, and the Epaminondas was also a philosopher of the Pythagorean school, and we're told about this in Diodorus 2.1. Philip came to the Macedonian throne in 359. This was not a really good moment in history for Macedon. They had been fighting the Illyrians in the west of Macedon, and they faced a threat from the Panoans and the Thracians, both north of Macedon, as well as Athens, one of the traditional kind of great powers of Greece, who wanted to depose Philip. And they're going to back a pretender against him. Athens also wanted to reclaim Amphipolis, a city-state in Thrace, and a site that we've looked at in my previous videos when we've looked at the Peloponnesian War. And Athens sent 3,000 hoplites to try and unseat Philip and reclaim Amphipolis. So all this means it looks rather ominous for Philip. Everything looks rather difficult. However, Philip overcomes these challenges, and this is one of the bits that shows us the skill of Philip as a king in terms of his opportunism. He takes advantage of time, and also he's a very, very skilled diplomat, but also, importantly, a skilled military leader. So he wins the Battle of Methone against Athens, who were backing Aegeus, who was a pretender to the Macedonian crown. He had previously held the crown very briefly for about a year, about 40 years earlier. Now he's killed in this battle. We're not fully clear on how or why, or in the exact circumstances of it. There are different versions, but anyway, he dies in the battle, so that's important. Athens is beaten, that's important. And then we see Philip jumping very quickly from military action to diplomacy. So he immediately released the Athenian prisoners that he'd taken from the battle. He also withdrew from Amphipolis and declared it to be independent, and then sent ambassadors to Athens to make peace. So he's won militarily, but he's not kind of then gone and kind of stood in the glory, and he's kind of gone, right, this is the moment to make moves, diplomatic moves with Athens, and try and get favourable settlement rather than just taking the short-term victory. Now, Philip proves to be the absolute arch opportunist. The king of the Panoans had died. Philip then attacks them. He also attacked the Illyrians, forcing their withdrawal from Macedonian cities. So the earlier setback taking place was just before he takes over. He then kind of overturns that. Diodorus in 16.3 tells us how having subdued the Illyrians and the Panoans, he acquired the empire of his fathers. So he has essentially rebuilt the Macedonian boundaries, borders, to how they had previously been. And his opportunism is evident again 2 years later. So Athens is fighting in the social war, which takes place between 357 and 355. And and this distracted them. Philip then attacked Amphipolis, putting it under siege and taking it. He also took Pindar from Athens on the Macedonian coast. So when it suits him and he goes, well, actually, I'm not going to face the full force of Athens, or the Panoans are in a bit of disarray because their king's just died. He took advantage of those moments, and that's why he's seen as a kind of a bit of a master of opportunism and diplomacy. He also allied with Olythenus, and he conquered Potida. Now we've seen Potida as well in when we looked at the Peloponnesian War, and it's one of the ones at the top of the Aegean on the kind of the three pronged bit that comes down, and we saw that doing the extracts, the fighting in the earlier wars. And also in the Persian Wars, even before that. So it had an Athenian garrison, again, taking control of it was an important part of the Peloponnesian War for Athens. Now he gave Potida to the Olynthians and treated the Athenian garrison very well, sending them home safely. So again, he seems not being overly cruel, was being victorious, but acting with honour. Now, the key sources that tell us about Philip are really quite interesting. So there's Diodotus Siculus, who wrote between 60 and 30 BC, and he was writing his Library of History, and he wanted to illustrate moral lessons from history. And he paints a kind of relatively positive picture, and you can see I picked up on some of that, as a lot of historians will do looking at this, because that's what one of the sources is. And it kind of... Philip does seem to be really quite clever in a lot of the stuff that he does, and again, there's something that's quite appealing about that. The other source we have for him really isn't a history at all. It's from Demosthenes, who was an Athenian, and what we've got is this series of speeches. Now, he was an orator who was very, very strongly anti-Philip, referred to by other orators at the time as a Philip hater. So his speeches weren't set out to become history, and he portrays all Philip's actions in a negative light and warns his fellow Athenians of the threat Philip posed. And others in Athens were less anti-Philip and willing to work with him, shown by the piece of Philocrates. Philocrates was one of the diplomats involved in it, and so he's not necessarily a typical or singular view of Athens on Philip. It's a particular side in the debates in Athens over it, and a really quite extreme one in that. So we've got one kind of relatively positive picture and something that is an attempt to build this enormous history, and then we've got one where we've got kind of an antagonistic contemporary who very much sees Philip as a massive threat to Greece. And is constantly warning his fellow Athenians about Philip's threat to Greece, Philip's threat to democracy. Moving on to military reorganisation practices and technology. So the Macedonian army was a professional army, not a conscript army. It was constantly training. It was permanent, not seasonal. Now, all these things make it kind of stand out at the time. In fact, you can go through a lot of history that would make it stand out. Now, Diodorus tells us that, and having improved the organisation of his forces, equipped his men suitably with weapons of war, he then held constant manoeuvres of the men under arms and competitive drills. This is in 16.3 in Diodorus. So we've got this highly organised, well-drilled professional army. And probably the most important or famous bit about Philip's military reorganisation or technology was the bringing in the introduction of the sarissa, which was a long spear. Now, we might remember from the Peloponnesian Wars the hoplites, and they fought with spears. Well, these are different. These are 12 foot long, and the kind of the formation with the sarissas, as is shown in the picture above me, was a kind of very intimidating one. They were very difficult to control and to use effectively, so it required a large amount of training. Now, when you've got a constantly training permanent army, you can do that kind of thing. And Philip also made the ranks 16 deep rather than normal 8, and this made the the Macedonians with Sarissa are kind of almost unstoppable block of kind of infantry. There's only kind of one part of the Macedonian army, but it's a kind of really important part, and it kind of pins and holds a lot of the opponent's soldiers. It's very difficult to defeat. Now, the problem with the men carrying the sarissas is they kind of have to move in a very particular formation and very slowly. So one of the things that Philip did is he developed a kind of group of elite infantry, as the hippospates, or shield bearers. Now the shield bearers were more like the traditional Greek phalanx. They had much larger shields. With the guys with the sarissas had a shield on their shoulders, a small one, because they had needed both hands to hold the sarissa. So these are more like your traditional Greek soldiers. And again, an image above me. So they were able to move a lot faster, and they fought with spears or swords, along with their large shields. And he used these often to as kind of shock troops. They were very much the elite, and he also used them in combination with his cavalry. So Philip had learned much of his military tactics whilst in Thebes. He was also an innovator. A tactic he used that was then later used by Alexander, one of his famous victories at Granicus and at Issus. It was when the left and centre held back whilst the right engaged, again creating a gap to which the very famous Macedonian companion cavalry would charge through, with the support of the shield bearers. As I mentioned earlier, they kind of worked in harmony, and the centre, the kind of the key to Macedonian military success was going to be this companion cavalry. The Macedonians' famous horsemen and the companion cavalry were the kind of these very well trained, hugely effective cavalry force. Now, the key in that was then creating the circumstances in which they could be most effective, and creating gaps in enemy lines was one of the important bits of that. So something that's developed by Philip that we'll later see being used by Alexander. Other elements of his army, he used kind of missile troops. He had Cretan archers, agrarian javelin throwers, and other light armed spearmen. So he brings in non-Macedonians to perform kind of other roles to supplement his kind of his infantry and his cavalry and his shield bearers. He's got these missile troops as well. He also develops a thing, and then again this makes it stand out to some of the things that we see in the Peloponnesian War, where Philip is also developing siege equipment and techniques, including a 30-meter high tower to kind of take walls, and various catapults. And again, Macedonia was kind of hemmed in by walled Greek cities, and therefore the kind of the need to be good at siege warfare was kind of paramount to them. And also Philip employed a group of engineers, and we saw about this kind of Pythagorean education that he'd had. So we can see in this it really is an innovator, and he's picked this stuff up elsewhere, and some of it's through necessity. So militarily he's very good, but undoubtedly the kind of the key ability, and the one that he was much prouder of, Philip, was his ability as a diplomat. So I hope that's been helpful. Again, apologies for the horrendous pronunciation. I'm really not great with this. It's something I will work on. So I hope that's been helpful to you as a bit of an introduction to some stuff on Philip. I'm going to build this series of videos as I go through the year and I start teaching it. And we will hopefully have a series of videos that we will prove helpful with your studies. There is also on Alan History Knows loads of other history videos. There's stuff on the Peloponnesian War. There's lots of more modern history on there as well, including Tsarist and Communist Russia, the Tudors, all kinds of different stuff, and there's loads of politics stuff on there as well. So if you're doing A-level politics, A-level history, or A-level ancient history, hopefully there'll be stuff on the channel which will be of use and interest to you, or if you're generally just interested in history and politics. Thank you very much for watching.